Good afternoon, everybody. It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, well, 12:59 to be exact, on this beautiful Monday, the 13th of August, 2018. Welcome to today's video series. It's like I'm recording videos. Welcome to today's live stream over the crypto markets, and we're going to be discussing a lot today on the past price action, what we can expect going on in the future, and so forth. Need to open it up. I forgot my little where'd it go? There's a disclaimer always supposed to, anytime anybody does these, I forgot to do the disclaimer. Actually, pull it up, but anyways, goes like this. Derivatives trading and cryptocurrency trading involves substantial risk. It's not suitable for all investors. If you have questions about how you should invest your money in cryptocurrencies, you should talk with your financial advisor. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a registered agent. I have no intention to do that because that is crazy. Some people who manage funds for people like retirement and massive funds like that, they're crazy and they're good at their job, and I do not want that stress. Saying that, let's get into this. So anything that I say is not to be considered a suggestion of investment advice. This is just talking about my opinions as an analyst. Okay, taking a look here, we have Bitcoin. Not surprised, Friday I was not able to be here because I had the contractors here. They were fixing the basement that was flooded this summer, so that was just a real bleh kind of a time. So they were banging and hammering and sawing and replacing 2x4s as part of the frame of the wall, putting in insulation and drywall. It's just mudding. Oh man, I don't know if any of you have ever done drywall work before, but that is labor. Oof, man. Especially if you have to do it overhead. Ugh. I think that's why my shoulders suck. I used to do a little bit of that in college. Okay. We had a big drop in price. Let's look at the daily real quick here. I mean, I'm not really saying anything we don't know, but on the daily, if we look back to Friday, which was the 10th, we can see that we went from, at the open at 6,500, we traded all the way down from 6,500 all the way down to 6,000, okay? And we found support right at that 886, 882 Fibonacci zone, and that's where we found a lot of support. If we look on the daily, we have a tweezer bottom here, a double bottom formed there, back to back. That's a good thing to see. Then as we went along into the weekend, I mean, this channel here, this is a linear regression channel, starting from this swing high, and then I put it down to this swing low. That was on the 4th of August. We traded below the regression channel, then we came back into it. And then this morning when I was talking to the Forex Lens folks, we took a quick look at this, and we saw that price returned back up to the middle line of the regression channel and then came back down, and we're currently sitting at the base of this regression channel again. So essentially we are just in a downtrend range trade, and the behavior of a lot of these is that as prices move and they continue maintaining the channel, and in this case as prices move lower, it gets harder for prices to actually continue to move lower. And that's just one way to look at this. If we take a peek over here in our square of 144, I want to go to the daily. Here we go. And looking at a couple of angles here. Let me get the 4-hour. Hide the Ichimoku, lock the scale. Let's make it a little easier. Okay, so I have an arrow pointing to this highlighted zone, and what was nice to see as far as price action over the weekend was that we traded down, we rallied back up, And, we're just trading around in that 6,300 value area again. And then as we got to this angle, we didn't have strong responsive selling. We just kind of drifted across it. And currently we are actually finding support on this angle. Okay, we're not testing below this angle. What I was maybe anticipating in a bearish case scenario was prices moving down here, but this entire zone here is pretty supportive. Not just because it's the $5,000 value area, but for a lot of reasons. So if we I'll stop that. This line right here, this is the 886 Fibonacci level of of the initial swing of 2017 in the fall to the all-time high. So this is kind of that breakout swing trade level, and we are at the 886 level right there at 5400. And then right above that is an inner harmonic of 5666. This is a natural pivot, but then even more important is this level right here, so 5,000. And if all of us have been reading news or listening to other people talk about cryptos, the low that's been discussed has been testing 5,000. Certainly that's in the cards. I could even see it perhaps even wanting to test that 2,300 value area again, which I'd be kind of giddy about that. But this right here is a pretty hard zone for us to trade below. But Bitcoin does have these flash crash moves or these flash pump moves where it gets to a certain point, and if you trade forex or futures, sometimes you'll see, like we could see a candlestick that looks kind of like we'd have to go back in time here probably to right here. So if we look at this candlestick right here, price moved down. This was in December 22nd. If you remember, if you were trading this day at all, prices moved from 13,000 all the way down to 13,500 to 10,500, and that happened within like a couple minute period. It didn't take long. Prices just dropped. There's a huge stop run, and then it rallied back up very quickly. So that is a situation that we could see play out right here. Is if we get close to 5,000, we could see a real flash crash or a stop run that goes down to 3, 2, or 1K. That is a very strong probability, but I wouldn't freak out because the prices certainly would not stay down there for very long. If they did, that would mean that there's a total lack of buyers anymore. And then that would mean that we'd reach these floor prices that were really unheard of all year, and that would bring in significant liquidity. But right now, looking at it just in our short-term view, limited risk lower because we have a lot of support right around here at the 5K region. Will it go that low? I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't see that in the current market geometry. We would have to push down a lot lower. We would have to break below this angle, which could happen. We could break below this angle. We would follow the rule of angles, and that would state that we would move to test the next angle, which is down here, which would fulfill the scenario. So we've got a confluent zone of a couple Gann angles right here. We've got the 886 long-term fib level. We've got an inner pivot support, and then we have major support. So this 2/8 level, this is going to be the hardest. This is going to be the most supportive zone in Bitcoin's chart. If we're using these price value harmonics, the 2/8 is the most responsive buying until we were to get back down to $1, which would be a little weird. Uh, so that is what we are. That is what we are looking at. Okay. Now, do want to point out though that if we take a look, that we do have. Where are you at? We do have what looks like an inverse head and shoulders pattern that could be forming here. And I want to change those colors because that is the behavior of this inverse head and shoulders would be bullish. So bullish inverse head and shoulders pattern. That is what's showing up here. We could travel further down to fulfill that. Maybe if it wants to trade over here for about another day and then test this angle again, then we would find that a deeper right shoulder. But otherwise, the thing with head and shoulders pattern, folks, is the head and shoulders pattern, whether it's the regular or the inverse, is that they are one of the most profitable patterns in trading. However, they are also one of the most rejected patterns in trading. So they only become profitable when they have completed their formation. Okay, so we're really talking about a breakout trade. So when we have this kind of activity here, we have this is called the neckline. The buy zones are generally a little ways above where you would look at the probably the neckline or whatever. If we're looking at an inverse, we're looking at a break of the highest part of that neckline, which is right here. So breakout traders would be looking to trade above that, or because they do retest, you wouldn't enter the breakout right away. You would wait for a pullback down to that zone. So that is a probability to look at too, and that's based on the 4-hour chart. And yeah, if we take a look at the daily price scale, let's go to auto scale. Looking at this on the daily, we do see that same head and shoulders possible setup here. If I just hide all the drawing tools, look at the price action itself, we do have technically a bearish engulfing candlestick, and it's an outside bar. And outside bars and inside bars, they have different meanings, and there's quite a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Debate on how to read those. So, like the color, some people will say that, well, this is a you read this as a bearish engulfing candlestick and not an outside bar, because you wouldn't consider this a bullish outside bar because the candlestick didn't close green. But I mean, there's it's you find controversy when it's an outside bar still, but it's bearish in a down move. So a lot of people say that this is still a reversal. And so the entry areas here are fairly simple. We would look at the entries. We'd look at the bar previous, and so there would be longs above, slightly above the high of the previous candlestick, and then shorts below the low of that inner candlestick. So that's how, or some people won't even consider that. They would even wait for a lower low before they would enter, or it's you don't get a straight view here for this. What we should notice is that we do have some bullish divergence here on the daily. We have these lows that were forming here, but the composite index was trending up, and so was the stochastic RSI. So while price is making lower lows, we were making higher lows in our oscillators. That is a form of bullish divergence. Additionally, it looks like we are forming two double bottom zones. So certainly if we were to test down again the 58.20 zone, if we were to form a bottom zone in there, and really the current price action, I consider all this activity to be within the same value zone as here. So what I mean by that is if we were to take this here and just kind of, oops, not that one. If we were to just kind of highlight a zone, a price zone, I would consider where we're currently trading within that bottom, that first initial bottom area, because this is where we had new swing lows form around here. So yeah, just be aware of that, pay attention to that. A lot of the altcoins as well, they are facing a lot of pressure. Cardano, the dollar pair of Cardano is making newer lows, which I actually personally I did buy up more Cardano. Let's see if I go to order history. Where you at? Yes, I did get filled. 8,459. That was at the 10,537 value, and then again at, yeah, cool. So Cardano making new lows. Nano, this is the ugliest chart ever. Nano making new lows. It had some responsive buying on the hourly, but it's making new lows. Basic attention token, it is forming new lows, new swing lows as well. See these big red candlesticks? They show up right before a rally. XLM, Stellar Lumens. It's got this is a pretty good description, textbook example of a bear flag. But there's quite a bit of buying that's going on there. Let's see. Bitcoin Cash, don't like it, I hate it. It is making new. This is nuts. It's hard to believe that Bitcoin Cash back in May was trading at $1,800 per coin, and now we're actually below. As much as I hate Bitcoin Cash, I think actually it's way extended and overdone. Holy cow, yeah it is. Yeah, it's got new, well, at least on Coinbase's data, it's got all-time lows. We've just made new lows. Now, if you look at in the stock market, there's an old I don't know if you want to call it an axiom or a mantra that the best time to buy something that makes an all-time high is right when it made an all-time high. Oftentimes, when things make new all-time highs, those are generally created as the new floors. Same with all-time lows; those are sometimes created as the new ceilings. And Bitcoin Cash being all the way down here is kind of interesting. I wouldn't touch it though, just because there's going to be a lot of fluctuations here because the Mt. Gox conservators and the liquidation that happened during this year with Mt. Gox stuff, they are now going to be paying out in Bitcoin Cash instead of Bitcoin. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Okay, so that's Bitcoin Cash. Monero is making new yearly lows. Ripple is worthless, pointless. I don't like Ripple. I think it's just the most fake coin, the most pump and dumped fake coin ever. I think Ripple is worthless. I don't like it. Ethereum, Bitcoin pair. You can see that that's it. This is probably the most fun pair to trade if you like to trade in cryptos and you like to if you can't short. I know I'm going to lose my train of thought if I don't go over this. So if you cannot short a market in cryptos or you're not comfortable doing it, trade the Ethereum Bitcoin pair. Trade the performance of Ethereum against the performance of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is doing this chart will really kind of help you and tell you, what to buy or sell. So let's say you only want to trade Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's cool. If I look at this chart and I'm using, technicals, or let's say I'm using the Ichimoku system, then this would be telling me that right around here is where I wanted to short Ethereum. Okay, or in other words, go long Bitcoin. And so I would buy Bitcoin because Bitcoin was outperforming Ethereum. So I would see this drift down here, blah blah blah. And so I'm still going short Ethereum by going long Bitcoin. And then the inverse of that is true if we were to look kind of, back here. So this is like after December, we saw Bitcoin had its big its big panic crash happened, and then Ethereum gained a lot of momentum. So this is where you saw Bitcoin trading up still, and then Ethereum was gaining ground. Bitcoin started to crash. We would have gone long Ethereum here, okay? And at some point, we would have gotten out of Ethereum and then bought Bitcoin with that Ethereum instead. So it's just a rotation of crypto capital. And you can do that with trading these charts. It's a good thing to trade if you don't know what else to trade. You can't. I mean, you're talking about like the two most valuable market cap coins in all the world. And if you're gonna trade something against each other, these two are the ones that are fun to trade. This is a fun chart to look at. Especially when it starts to trend on a daily, then that there's generally quite a few good trade opportunities there. Bitcoin Gold, that's a personal favorite of mine, well below its zones there. EOS getting just hammered, man. I tell you what, it's hard to believe that back in June, prior to the release of the mainnet, we were up at $15. We have lost from up here all the way down to here where we are currently, 70% of EOS's value since June. So that's a pretty big deal. That's the EOS dollar pair. So it's nice to see though here on the daily chart we do have some nice growth in this pair here. Sorry, I'm just reaching down here. There we go. We had nice growth in that EOS dollar pair, but it started to trade down, and finally, actually, that's these new lows. It's a little extended. I mean, I think as we get into the next phase, EOS is a entirely separate entity. I'm honestly surprised that Coinbase has not discussed listing EOS because it is a decentralized blockchain. I mean, I don't know how decentralized you want to consider it, but I mean, its rollout was a little iffy. If you remember that EOS, you had, and I went through this bit of a nightmare. It wasn't really a nightmare, but the EOS tokens that were available on the exchanges, they were ERC20 tokens, so they were Ethereum tokens. And so if you had purchased EOS tokens, you had to send them to a wallet that was okay with the EOS team. So like the Exodus wallet is an example. You had to send your EOS to that wallet. You couldn't leave it on the exchanges. It didn't work if you left them on the exchanges. And then what you had to do is you had to stake them. So you had to basically register your coins with the EOS blockchain. And then after the mainnet launched, those EOS tokens that you had, you could not move them. Okay, you could not move those EOS tokens. Like if you had like $5,000 worth of EOS tokens that you bought on Binance and then you sent to Exodus, and then you had them staked and applied so you could vote, you couldn't move them. So, and what made it slower was that a large percentage of the EOS tokens are owned by a large percentage of them are owned by various exchanges. But there needed to be 16% of the entire pool of EOS tokens. 16% of all of those had to be used to vote. So they had to you had to vote for the people that were going to basically maintain the blockchain and keep it up and going and provide enough power and usage to record transactions, run dApps, all that jazz. So that was a bit of a slow process. It took a while for it to finally complete its rollout, and then when it finally did, there wasn't a huge big hoopla hurrah. I mean, if this would have happened back in November, December of 2017, this would have been a totally different story. But looking forward, this is probably one of the most undervalued complete blockchain infrastructures that currently exists. It's out, it's running. They've worked out a lot of glitches. It's very transparent. They have had some issues with theft, but they've been able to roll back those changes, and that was very reminiscent of the Ethereum debacle where $14 million worth of Ethereum was stolen, and then the response to get people their money back was to create a hard fork of Ethereum, and that's where we came with Ethereum Classic. So there's issues. There's issues there, and Ethereum may be a disappearing blockchain. There may be a lot of people leaving the Ethereum chain to go into Ethereum Classic and vice versa. Most of the ICOs, the great majority of the ICOs that have been created in 2017 and 2018 have been on the Ethereum blockchain, but they still have issues. Like if something like CryptoKitties can clog up the network, it's not. It's hard to put any faith in the reliability of your project or your utility or your coin on that network if it can be clogged up with things like CryptoKitties. So, yeah, it's a lot of these issues are going to be solved in the future, but that's why EOS and Cardano are so are so interesting to look at because they have apparently solved those issues. Now, from a trading standpoint, I love this under $5. I think that is a steal, and joy of joys for it to be trading that low. In fact, what is the current market cap? Are we under 200 billion? Not quite. We're at 205 billion. We've had a pretty, what is the monstrous change been? So Tezos, Wand Chains dropped by 15. Zilka, KuCoin. KuCoin is I just read a story about KuCoin where apparently their offices are empty, like they're not there anymore. Made Safe, Ontology, Golem. Golem is actually a really good project. Walton Chain, that's a hell of a deal. IOTA, Blech, Verge, Wax, Neo, Can Die. Let's see. PivX is actually a really cool project. Tron, Bitcoin Private. What that? That's interesting. We look at the top. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. All right. Well, it's in the top 30. Bitcoin or Ethereum is in there. Bancor, which is really cool. Dash. Yeah, a lot of bleeding in the market as a whole. Waves. I'm actually a huge fan of Waves. I do own quite a bit of Waves. Is actually up today. So is Stellar Lumens. True USD. This is an actual dollar coin. It's better than Tether as far as security because it is based in the U.S. and it is backed with real dollars. I mean, where Tether ran by Bitfinex, and not really ran by Bitfinex, but Tether is not very transparent about whether there is actually a dollar-to-dollar pairing. It could just be magic monopoly money, and everybody knows that always is a good thing. But True USD is they've actually got they're transparent. They've got financials showing what their reserves are. So you also have the right to the dollars. So it's not. It's the best alternative. It's the safest. I'll say that it's the safest fiat conversion stablecoin that you can get right now. All right, it is hands down that is the safest. All right. Bitcoin, yeah. Surprisingly, not a lot of. I mean, these things are actually sitting pretty. Doge is actually holding up pretty nice. Steam is holding up pretty nice compared to the broader market. Yeah, there's actually a pretty good resting here going on. So let's bring EOS down to the dollar here on the hourly. Yeah, our volume's ramping up as prices are moving down. We like to see this happen if we can get a good reversal candlestick. Dash on the hourly. That's a huge buy there. That's a big volume spike. Populous big volume spike. Did we get a lot of volume spikes in general at that time? We did, didn't we? A lot of buyers stepped in there. What did it do to Bitcoin? Yeah, Bitcoin had a lot of buyers step in at the close. Wow, look at the current hourly candlestick. It has not moved much. That's pretty wild. So we got that going on. Litecoin finding support at this is a major harmonic level. This is very hard for Litecoin to break, as that $56 value area. This is actually an extremely strong support zone. Cardano, just kind of responding to the broader market there. Nano, new lows. Basic attention token. It's not new lows, but it's getting close to those yearly lows here. Stellar Lumens, a lot of support here. So been pretty resilient, but I'd be careful of this bear flag setup. I sold mine this afternoon. Well, this afternoon I sold it. what did I sell it at? 22.5 something. Go look at the other markets. Euro is doing that. Yeah. Just dude, there's some weird moves in these currency markets in general. I mean, it is just this has been an odd July and August. There have been some wild moves. So yeah, I mean, as far as looking forward on the day, because if we see some supportive buying conditions being met at the close of the hour, I'm looking to see if those are going to be good trading opportunities or not. Definitely want to look at the end of day. And see Litecoin. So we really got to watch out for Litecoin. That one, when it finally decides to catch a bid, it's gonna be a mover. Ethereum Classic as well. We'll see how much faith there is in the bears to keep these prices moving lower. We are getting close to these swing lows here. ETC's sitting there. That other one that we would launch, if we look at that relative rotation graph that we looked at last week, not Forex, but this is crypto. So if we look at cryptos, here's the relative rotation graph. We are showing that Stellar Lumens is actually, we were looking at this over here, if you remember last Wednesday and Thursday, actually all of last week. We were looking at all the cryptos that were sitting in these quadrants, the improving and the lagging quadrants. And as Stellar Lumens was sitting in the weakening quadrant, it was just kind of planing over here. And as I was describing how these work, we look at things in the weakening category as instruments that we want to look at for possibly buying, because as they transition and slide into the lagging category, we want to take a note of when the arrow starts to point up and the actual the lagging line behind it starts to slope up, because then that tells us that it's actually gaining strength. It's what it looks like on a candlestick chart. We should see a basing and consolidating of price, and then we should see a general rise. And what this is telling us now is that Stellar Lumens is moving at a very rapid pace from those bottoming conditions. That is really reflected pretty well on our chart. XLM, where are you at? There we are. So we can see that over the, ever since last week, we have seen the broader crypto market really take it on the nose, but Stellar Lumens has remained fairly flat to trending higher, and that is reflected very, very well in the relative rotation graph, where we see it actually moving from these lows and trading higher. If we look over here, we see Strat dollar, the Strat US dollar, and that is way over here. That is the biggest outlier next to Ethereum Classic, where we see this guy sitting over here. Very similar situation to Stellar Lumens. If we were to look at that chart, I would imagine that we would see some upwards momentum over the last couple days at least, or maybe just one day. Could be totally wrong. Let's take a look. That is the Strat USD. Nope, total opposite. However, it's down move. Excuse me. What this is telling us is that the move down that Strat has had is it's still outperforming its peers. It has not lost a lot compared to everything else, because if we take a peek up here, we look at Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ripple, Ethereum. Notice how that's pointing. These are all pointing heavily to the downside. And that is telling us that they're coming off of those improving conditions, and they're sliding back down into lagging, which means that they are getting into buying conditions again. And then Ethereum Classic obviously has had such a dramatic rise in the past that it's the equation used to um, smooth these patterns out is having some difficulty catching up. That's one thing about the relative rotation graphs is that it's in cryptos, because there are such massive percentage drives one way or the other, and because the relative rotation graph smooths the performance so much, the RRG gives you a really good example of current conditions while filtering out a lot of those random aberrations and those movements. But at the same time, from a trading perspective, you would want to see those random moves that are those flash moves. But looking here right now, the only two on the chart that still are showing that these would be good opportunities to look at would be we'd be looking at Zcash, Stellar Lumen still, and Stratus. The real laggard out of this entire chart right now is IOTA. If we look at that chart, that's enough to make somebody cry if you are an IOTA bull. That is it's an ugly chart. Where are you at? They have an IOTA Turkish lira pair. I don't know if you all have been paying attention to the currency market, but the Turkish lira is like down over 50% in a week against the dollar. Let's see. Here we are. IOTA. There we go. Whew, yeah, that is a drive down, man. We may breach. Well, we're certainly at yearly lows in IOTA. But IOTA, according to the RRG, is the one that may give us the first major pump and drive higher from these zones. So things to look at. I mean, cryptos on a Monday are a lot like Forex on a Monday, or futures on a Monday, or equities on a Monday. You just kind of want to see what they're doing near the end of the day. And I'm saying if you're a U.S. customer, the end of the day, we're talking about the 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time is where you want to look at what cryptos are doing. If you see that there's a flattening of price at these new lows, there's a good risk to reward for some longs, because we've got we didn't go over time cycles much today. We really don't need to because it's a Monday, but those time cycles, they have all kind of came to a culmination. They are done, and so we have a lot of those time cycles telling us that we are transitioning into that bullish market. We've actually had that happen ever since July, and we've just had a very extended price action move that has not caught up with time. So yeah, we'll just have to keep our eyes on this. It'll be a shorter session today. Let's keep our eyes open. Keep your eyes on the things that are that have lost significant value. In fact, I really like to see the ones that have lost the most value over the week. In TradingView, there's a crypto screener, and if we want to look at the performance, I like to look at the weekly performance, and anything that is only BTC pairs. Anything that is greater than 12%, but has good volume, is something that I would be looking at participating in, because it has a high move possibility. So Bitcoin dollar, of course, is down 14.22% week over week. The only other one in here that I see, like V actually has some good volume. I think that's only on Bittrex though. Ripple. And the reason I'm saying compare them to Bitcoin, because what that's telling us is that not only would it be underperforming against its dollar equivalent, but it's underperforming against the most important crypto. And consequently, this is also a sign of a reversal coming, is that Bitcoin now represents 50% of the entire value of the cryptocurrency market. That has not happened since prior to the 2017 pump. And so when Bitcoin equals a greater percent of the market share, think of that as a flight to safety in cryptocurrencies. Think of Bitcoin like the US dollar or gold. It's a flight to security. And so what that means is that the speculative markets are very, very much overdone, and that there should be a planing and a flattening of prices, which we've seen happen for the last 3 months. The prices have, realistic for Bitcoin, we've been trading in a range. We should get a return to speculative markets and risk, where we see Bitcoin's market share decrease because there's more money going into growth and speculative and value plays in cryptos. So that's what we're seeing is the end to a lot of these moves here. Capital is fleeing the speculative markets, going back into Bitcoin because it's all the money is waiting to go into new speculative markets. Maybe current existing ones, but certainly we're going to see a rotation into some other areas. So pay attention to that. Anyways, I hope you all had a great weekend. Hope it was a safe weekend. Forex Lens, folks, I'll see you in the morning at 7:30 Central Standard Time. And for the rest of you, if I don't see you in the morning, I will see you tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.